always thought it weird of video games to want to recreate card games, such as in card battlers like Slay the Spire. Card games were what we had to make do with before video games. We could only look at little static pictures of dragons and wizards and imagine the titanic struggle between them. Now that we have the technology to actually depict dragons and wizards in titanic struggles, it feels a little bit arse backwards to use it to make little virtual versions of the static picture cards. But you know what's slightly weirder? When a dragons and wizards card game exists diegetically inside a world in which dragons and wizards are real. I mean, that's their everyday life. It'd be the equivalent of us in the real world playing a board game about a team of accountants competing to land the big contract before tax season. But not only is there a nerdy-ass Magic the Gathering knockoff in this epic high-stakes fantasy world, but it's so anomalously popular that everyone from the gate guard to the general of the armies to the emperor of the cosmos will sit down for a quick game of it if you ask, even while rampaging hordes of undead are beating at the barricades. And it's precisely that kind of integrated game-long side activity that I want to talk about today, because I feel like I've been seeing them a lot lately. Gwent from Witcher 3 would be the success story, but it's cropped up recently in Flintlock, Cryptmaster, and Final Fantasy Rebirth, and every time I see it, it yields the same reaction from me. Please piss off with this shit. I'm trying to save the fucking world. Every time a game tries to introduce me to some kind of recurring collectible card game that we can challenge a range of NPCs to throughout the plot, my instinct is to shun it completely. And I suppose I want to interrogate that reaction. I mean, is there really any harm in it? As a mechanic, it's nothing new. Final Fantasy VIII probably set the tone for this kind of thing way back in '99 with Triple Triad. And Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic had its Pazak thingy. By sheer coincidence, I've had to play that very recently thanks to Patreon obligations, so you can see how it feels like I'm being followed around by this shit at the moment. If you want to be pedantic, you could argue that the first Leisure Suit Larry game beat them all to the punch by letting you play in-world blackjack, although that was hardly a side activity. It was literally the only way to make the money that was essential for beating the game, and you had to save scum to do so effectively, and you know what, we might have stumbled upon one of the potential reasons for my animosity towards tabletop games within games. It's not that I dislike playing tabletop games generally. I've never felt inclined to get my head around Magic the Gathering, but I'll take on all comers at Scrabble. I've played the odd bit of Munchkin and Red Dragon Inn, but I suppose that sort of thing has always appealed more to me as a social activity. I'm not bothered about winning or optimizing play, I'm just using it as a social lubricant to chat and drink and hang out with mates, none of which is a factor when an NPC challenges me to Gwent. But having said that, I don't mind a bit of the aforementioned Slay the Spire or Balatro, so why does a similar game as an addition to a larger game disengage my stiffy? It could be a combination of wanting to stay immersed in the story and wanting to get through the game before my review deadline is up. The side game is almost invariably optional, so wasting time on it isn't going to represent progress in the larger game to any significant degree, lest it alienate us non-card game liking players. I like to participate in the narrative, as you know. When the game tells me a situation is urgent, I like to act like it is, as that would make sense for the character, even if in reality there's no urgency at all. Stopping right outside the boss door to play Shove Happily with a passing leper kinda kills the whole illusion, doesn't it? There's just something about the rest of the game stopping dead and being frozen behind a full-screen minigame that makes the minigame obnoxious to me. It's also why I don't like the hacking in BioShock. It's a distraction from the broader matters at hand. It's there to give the player a break from the rest of the core gameplay and plot. But if I need to take a break, I could just stop playing and do something else. Trying to get you to take a break from the game without closing the game feels, I don't know, a bit pushy. It's like a package holiday where you're not allowed to leave the resort, lest you discover you can buy food from local villages for about a quarter of the cost. I didn't used to begrudge games for having diegetic games within them because they weren't doing me any harm and I recognized their value as a world-building tool, like the fucking toy machines in Shenmue or the fact that you can piss in toilets in Duke Nukem 3D. It's not necessary or even what I want to do most of the time, but the fact that it's there emphasizes the world's complexity and verisimilitude. And in the case of Witcher 3, it adds something to Geralt's character that he likes playing cards in taverns. I always appreciate the way that game depicts his monster hunting career as essentially that of a travelling blue-collar handyman. But my feelings have been shifting because in the more recent raft of games listed, the diegetic minigame seems less and less like an incidental part of the world, and that's starting to hurt the verisimilitude. I'm thinking of Queen's Blood in Final Fantasy Rebirth. Not content with forcing it onto us as a part of the critical path, there's an entire bloody chapter of the game focusing on a tournament of the thing, which we can opt out of, yes, but it takes a bit of hunting and the game feels palpably disappointed if you do, like we're opting out of the full intended experience. And Cloud Strife, in contrast to Geralt, does not come across like someone who'd have any interest in pissing about with collectible card games, or indeed anything at all besides swords and hair care regimens. Certainly not such a complicated card game. The first time the game tried to explain the rules in a series of text screens, I realised halfway through I'd stopped trying to parse the words and was just listening intently to my tinnitus. Never quite understood how the Final Fantasy IX card game worked either, and I remember trying out that weird mechanical tactical board game thing in Sea of Stars? I sat for a moment staring at what looked like a Fisher-Price nuclear reactor diagnostics console, then threw up my hands and flipped my desk. It's another hit against creating a sense of reality because this game is supposed to be massively popular in taverns up and down the kingdom. But you'd think a game would need to be easy to play to be that fucking widespread. You'd think in most fantasy pubs the most popular game would be tossing 3 coins onto the bar, and if 2 of them are heads, you get punched in the face by a farm labourer. Cryptmaster and Flintlock are 2 recent games that had diegetic minigames, and both of them worried me, because neither game had the kind of large expansive scope that can justify throwing an entire separate game in for flavour alone, especially not Cryptmaster, a game based around exploring pokey dungeons and yelling one-word phrases at things. The surprisingly complicated collectible card game in that feels less like a fun, whimsical aside, and more like a significant percentage of the game's content, and shunning it entirely felt like wastage. So, why are these things cropping up in games so much? I mean, they don't improve the core gameplay because, as we've established, they're intended as a distraction from it. Maybe it's just a flex, a status symbol, a way to get into the cool kids club. Our game's so big it ate a whole other game for breakfast. Alternatively, maybe after Gwent in Witcher 3 was successful enough to warrant its own game, they're being thrown in the hope of that lightning striking again. Another potential cash milking opportunity. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker would be another example of that process in action. It's what TV shows used to call a stealth pilot, where they'd spend an episode focusing on side or entirely new characters as an interest check for a spin-off series. Alternatively, maybe it's just plain boredom. Game dev is a long, tedious process that's only getting longer, and game designers are restless, creative people, at least they fucking should be, who need something to do with their hands while they wait for the second unit studio to finish the cinematics. Why not alleviate the boredom by designing another, smaller game, then insert it into the bigger game to justify it on your timesheet? It's gotta be a better use of extra time than figuring out horse testicle shrinkage physics.